Hi, my name is Christoph Saulder and I'm currently a postdoc at the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics. Today I will present the results of my recent paper on baryon acoustic oscillation measurements using photometric redshift from the DESI Legacy Imaging survey. So, essentially how we got this plot here and what it means. Of course I didn't do this work alone, but with my colleagues Yong-Song Song, Min-Chi Oh, Yi Zheng, Ashley Ross, Ron-Pu Zhu, Jeffrey Newman, Albert Chuang and many other people from the DESI collaboration. We also need to thank our sponsors. Special thanks goes to the US Department of Energy as well as our 72 participating institutions. When I started this project, I didn't know more than the basic textbook description of baryon acoustic oscillations, short BAO, starting with some primordial overdensity in which the photon baryon plasma is forced into, the photon pressure will cause fast acoustic waves to travel outwards. At recombination, the pressure drops and essentially freezes the pattern of the density distribution of baryons. This will impact where galaxies will form, and we can detect this feature as an increase in the number density at a certain distance. After recombination, this characteristic pattern only scales with the expansion of the universe. This allows us to measure the expansion history of the universe by measuring the BAO in different redshift slices and thereby constraining cosmological parameters. I didn't start this project on my own accord. My predecessor left academia and my then supervisor assigned it to me. I was supposed to complete it quickly by using the same tools as for a similar preceding study, just with a new dataset. However, as I got more familiar with the methods and tools used for baryon analysis, I learned that the ones used for this type of data were less than ideal, and I even discovered a few new unencountered biases. To measure the BAO scale, we need to use the two-point correlation function. This boils down to essentially measuring the distances between all possible pairs of galaxies and adding them up in a histogram. One typically normalizes these counts by comparing them to a random catalog and using an estimator like the Landy-Sellet estimator shown here. One can see the BAO scale as a characteristic bump at around 100 megaparsec/h. The ratio between the prediction of the theoretical model and the observed scale is referred to as alpha parameter. Instead of just measuring the two-point correlation function along a radial direction, one can decompose it into a component parallel to the line of sight and orthogonal to the line of sight to study its anisotropic components. This toy model only shows the BAO shell and no other structure for better illustration. In this ideal model, without any redshift space distortions, the BAO appears as a perfect ring. For the anisotropic correlation function, one typically uses a binning scheme with the distance s and the angle mu, which is the ratio between s parallel and s. The lines dividing the mu bins are blue here, and the s bins are separated by dark green circles. On the top right panel here, the counts in each of these bins according to the s mu binning scheme are shown. For some reason, we also show an alternative binning scheme that bins in S perpendicular and mu. The S perpendicular bins are indicated by light green lines, and the counts in these bins are shown in the bottom right panel. So, let's make the toy model a little bit more realistic by adding redshift space distortions. The BAO ring becomes a little bit more blurry along the line of sight direction. However, uncertainties of photometric redshifts are much larger than that. We slowly introduce an increasing redshift uncertainty into the toy model to illustrate that. While for small uncertainties the BAO peak locations in the S-mu binning scheme remained consistent, they drift apart at higher uncertainties. The opposite happens to the BAO peak locations in the S-perpendicular mu binning scheme, where they become more consistent at larger uncertainties as the BAO signal along this line of sight gets washed out. This effect was already found by Chan et al. 2022 and confirmed in our paper. The photometric uncertainties of the DESI Legacy Imaging survey are around sigma 0 of 0.02, so well into this regime as shown here. The careful observer might have already noticed that not only did the BAO peak become more consistent in S-perpendicular mu binning scheme, but also shift slightly due to the mixing along the line of sight. This peak shape is a new bias first mentioned in our paper. One can also see that the shape of the two-point correlation function is different for photometric redshifts, hence previously used empirical functions are no longer fitting well. Therefore, we had to derive special simulation-based templates for fitting. Furthermore, only alpha perpendicular can be measured as all information in alpha parallel is lost. Now, armed with the new methodology, we do the reasonable thing. Put it on a wall and talk about something else. Last year, the results of the first year of DESI observations made a big impact in the cosmology community, as they show a slight preference for a time-dependent equation of state of dark energy. For more details, I recommend to watch my presentation on the DESI DR1 result in last year's Cosmology from Home. But I will also briefly summarize them here. The combined DESI BAO plus CMB plus supernova data shows a preference for a W0WA cold dark matter cosmology at around 3 sigma depending on the supernova sample, if W0 and WA are allowed to vary in the fits. Even expanding to a full shape analysis of the correlation functions and the power spectra, the results remain roughly the same. These surprising results brought a lot of attention to all details of the DESI DR1 data, and people pointed out the tension between SDSS, or more precisely eBOSS, and DESI DR1 in one particular data point. For luminous red galaxies around a redshift of 0.7, the SDSS and DESI DR1 data point for alpha perpendicular are at almost 3 sigma tension. While SDSS has covered more area than DESI DR1, DESI has the denser sample. We assume that this particular tension is just due to some sample variance, but how can we better understand what's going on there? We're gonna need a bigger survey. But there is no such survey. The DESI Legacy Imaging survey was used for targeting in DESI, and it even covers more area than DESI will do by the end of its run. We split the footprint into 4 regions: North Galactic Cap North, which was observed by telescopes in Arizona, while the other regions were observed with the Blanco in Chile. We also wanted to have continuous regions, hence we split off North Galactic Cap South. We split the South Galactic Cap into a north area that will be observed by DESI and a south area that will be out of reach for DESI. In all these areas, we apply the DESI LRG target selection with modifications and take all photometric redshifts between 0.6 and 0.8. So, Now we can finally take our tools from the wall and apply them. We calculate the two-point correlation functions in all 4 areas separately. Using easy-mocks, in which we carefully implemented all selection effects and the photometric redshift uncertainties, we can build a covariance matrix and run template fits to obtain the BAO scale from the measured data points. This figure shows the results for the first mu bin. In South Galactic Cap South, we found some masking issues that prevented us from obtaining reliable two-point correlation function measurements. Hence we couldn't do a fit there. For the second mu bin, we jointly fit the data of the first and second mu bin with different broadband terms, but the same alpha parameters for both. The same for the third mu bin, taking into account all data from the first 3 mu bins. And so on for the fourth and fifth. This method allows us to find the optimal mu range by looking for the lowest chi-square over degrees of freedom. We find the strongest results for a mu max of 0.3. We also notice that the BAO scale alpha perpendicular is different in each of the areas. How does our data relate to other datasets? Here we show the fiducial cosmology plotted for a perpendicular distance scale. Let's add the results from the Dark Energy Survey Year 6, which is another photometric based BAO measurement. Then we add the SDSS data, BOSS, and eBOSS, which is the contiguous data point. Next we add the DESI DR1 data, and we can already see the tension by naked eye. Finally, we can add our 3 data points for the different areas. Now the area around redshift 0.7 looks a little bit crowded, so let's zoom in to see it better. Our data point for North Galactic Cap North agrees well with eBOSS, while our data point for North Galactic Cap South agrees well with DESI DR1. Let's have a look at the footprint of these surveys. The LRGs of DESI DR1 are most complete in North Galactic Cap South. The bulk of the eBOSS LRGs are in North Galactic Cap North. When we run the numbers, we can confirm that within our range of interest, the majority of SDSS LRGs are indeed in what we call North Galactic Cap South, and the plurality of eBOSS data is in North Galactic Cap North, with the second largest contribution from South Galactic Cap North. At this point, I need to stress that this is not hard evidence, but it is just a strong indication that we might have found a solution for the SDSS DESI tension. At the time of submission, the DESI DR2 BAO results were not available, and by the acceptance of our paper, they were not published yet. My colleagues will present and explain them in great detail in their own talk during this Cosmology from Home conference. Here I will only display the footprint of the DESI DR2 LRGs, which has already gathered more data outside North Galactic Cap South. Since DESI DR2 data is available now, I will add it to the previously shown Cosmology plot. The new data point lies smack in the middle between SDSS and DESI DR1, and thereby mostly resolving the tension and confirming our expectation. When I initially embarked on this project, I had no idea about the very impactful science that DESI will be able to achieve, nor any plans beyond finishing up a quick paper using photometric redshift data before we got the results from the spectroscopic survey. However, due to finding two biases and flaws in initial methods, such as the BAO peak shift for photometric redshifts, a different binning scheme, and moving from empirical fitting functions to template fitting, as well as doing other projects aside, the publication of the results got delayed quite a bit. Usually this would be more of a disadvantage, but coincidence that the DESI SDSS tension showed up exactly in the right redshift range and that our method was exactly suitable to explore it further was a much welcome surprise. As we found different values for alpha perpendicular in different regions on the skies, this could indicate possible systematics in the target selection or cosmic variance. Although more indication than hard evidence, our results provide a possible explanation for the SDSS DESI DR1 tension and are in agreement with the DESI DR2 BAO results. In the future, we hope to explore variations in the angular distance scale using spectroscopic redshift from an increasingly complete DESI survey. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to answer all your questions either during the live discussions or any time on the dedicated Mattermost channel.